Gateway to the World. B2 Students Book by David Spencer. Unit 1. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 2. School Life.
Abroad. Assignment. Break. Continuous assessment. Coursework. Grade, mark. Higher education. Notes. Subject. Term. Timetable.
Unit 1. Reading.
Hi everyone. I live in Cambridge and this year I've decided I want to take up a new extracurricular activity. I want something a bit out of the ordinary, but any suggestions are welcome.
A.
Can you swim? You could try octopushing, which is like underwater hockey and is great fun. The team I'm in plays matches, but we don't take them too seriously. And I find the exercise takes my mind off all the assignments and exams I'm doing at the moment. Usually, we'll get together after training and have a bite to eat. It's a great way to make friends with all sorts of people from different schools and backgrounds. I train 3 times a week, but you don't need to attend every session.
B.
It depends on your interests, but as I'm really into science and robotics, it's probably no surprise that I recommend joining a robot football society. This year, we're trying to get to the Robo Cup, the World Cup of robot football. I really enjoy the competitive aspect, but the other thing is you meet people with similar interests. Some of our teaching staff are members too. To be honest, I reckon I learn as much from this club as from my science lectures.
C.
Some of my friends are constantly doing essays and revision, and being around them really stresses me out. I'm convinced finding time for extracurricular activities helps you study better. So, if you've just arrived at the uni and want to join a different kind of club, join the Sheila and Her Dog Society. It's existed for 10 years. We all behave as if we were 6 years old. We drink cocoa, eat chocolate and biscuits, and read children's stories. The idea may sound silly. The name definitely does. But curiously, we all find that going back to our childhood makes us feel kinder and more relaxed towards each other.
D.
Are you at school? You could start a Model United Nations MUN club if your school hasn't got one yet. The name says it all. Basically, you role-play being a delegate to the UN. It involves researching current affairs, public speaking and debating. You can also pick up lots of other skills like teamwork, leadership and critical thinking. I've been participating in simulated UN conferences for years. In fact, I've won 2 certificates for my speeches, which I'm really proud of.
E.
If you're at the uni, join the Jailbreak Society. We organise charity events where, in 2s or 3s, students have just 36 hours to get as far away as possible from jail. That's the campus, of course. Perhaps that doesn't sound so difficult, but you can't use any of your own money to pay for transport. In the past, some teams have done really well and gone all the way to the Canary Islands or New York. We made almost £30,000 for charity last year. We're organising the next event at this very minute, so you can always help us to set it up.
Unit 1. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3.
Today in the student chat room, we have 2 students who've just come back after studying abroad for a year, and they're going to tell us something about some of the pros and cons of doing just that. Poppy, you went to France to study in a secondary school for a year, didn't you?
That's right.
Why did you choose France?
I've always been interested in learning languages, and I love French, so it was the obvious choice. And it's not too far to come and go from England. That was important for my parents.
What do you think is the best part of studying abroad?
Everything. Personally, I love trying new food, listening to new music, learning about different cultures and stuff. So it was like a big holiday. Although it has to be said that I did work hard as well.
Harry, you spent a year in a secondary school in Switzerland, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
How was it?
Well, Switzerland is an amazing country, and the people were lovely. But my problem was that I can speak French, but I was in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, and I didn't speak a word of German, which made it really hard to make new friends. I felt quite lonely and homesick for the first few months, but then I went to special classes to learn German, which changed everything.
Did you find school very different in France and Switzerland?
The timetable was the big difference for me, because they don't have classes on Wednesday, but they go to school on Saturday mornings.
Oh?
Yes, but it was fine. I usually went swimming or did exercise on Wednesday morning, which is impossible here in England. Mind you, we also had a load of homework and assignments to do on Wednesdays too.
What about you, Harry?
There was a world of difference. I went to a vocational education and training school. They're quite common in Switzerland, but they don't really exist in the UK. My school specialised in restaurant and hotel work. That's one thing that I really enjoyed about my year abroad, and it helped me to decide what I want to do at university next year. The really tough part for me was coming back here and doing so many exams and essays again. Plus the fact that there were lots of things that I needed to study that I hadn't studied in my school in Switzerland.
So, what do you think you can learn from the experience of living abroad?
You learn to be more independent. For instance, I started to do some of my own washing and cooking and shopping.
Me too. It helped me to realise how much my parents do for me every day. Now that I'm back home, I help a lot more with the chores. My parents are really happy about that, obviously.
And was it expensive to study abroad?
Yes.
Yeah, that's something you need to think about if you want to study abroad. I mean, perhaps you don't need to pay for classes and stuff, but you need to think about flying there and back, all your living costs. Everything was more expensive in Switzerland too.
So, if any people listening are considering going abroad to study, what's your message to them?
Go to classes to learn some of the language before you go. It can help you to make friends and enjoy the experience more.
Yes, I agree. Knowing the language before definitely helps. And I suggest reading a bit about the country beforehand too. It can help you to know what to expect.
Unit 1. Developing Speaking. Exercises 2 and 3. Student A.
That's a good question. In fact, this is my last year at school, so I need to decide soon. I'd prefer to study at a university in the US than to stay here, but my parents would rather I didn't study abroad. I definitely want to continue in higher education though, probably studying biology, because it's always been my favourite subject.
Student B.
Yes, I do, unfortunately. I try to do as much as I can during the week because I'd prefer not to spend all weekend working. But we always have some extra work to do, like an assignment. I enjoy going out with my friends on Saturday, so I usually prefer doing my homework on Sunday to doing it on Saturday.
Student C.
I love football. It's great. I really like it.
Student D.
I prefer spending time with my friends now. But it's true that before I spent more time with my family. I think my parents would prefer me to spend more time with them sometimes, but we like doing different things now. They want to see different films at the cinema or go to different concerts, but my friends and I like the same things. That's why I prefer going out with them.
Student E.
Not really. There's a shopping centre where my friends and I hang out at the weekend. We don't go shopping or anything. We just walk around and chat, maybe have a bite to eat. If the weather's good, there's a park where we meet and maybe play football or something. But there aren't any cinemas or bowling alleys or places like that. That's why I'd rather not live in a small town. I'd rather live in a big city.
Unit 2. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 2. Work conditions and responsibilities.
Career. Colleague. Deal with the public. Earn a salary. Employee. Employer. Experience. High pressure. In charge of. Indoors. In good, bad, dangerous conditions. In good conditions. In bad conditions. In dangerous conditions. Internship. Manual. Outdoors. Permanent. Promotion. Qualifications. Responsible for. Secure. Self-employed. Skilled. Temporary. Training.
Unit 2. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 3. Working life, hours and pay.
Apply for a job. Be made redundant. Be offered a job. Be sacked, fired. Be sacked, be fired. Be well, badly paid. Be well paid, be badly paid. Become unemployed. Do shift work. Go job hunting. Look for a job. On flexi time. On the minimum wage. Out of work. Resign. Retire. Sign a contract. Work from 9 to 5. Work full time. Work long hours. Work overtime. Work nights. Work part-time.
Unit 2. Reading. Climbing, not cooking.
Doing the same job year after year can become very dull. But when Lydia Huayes Estrada and a group of her colleagues changed careers, it was quite a radical move. Lydia and her friends are indigenous Aymara women from Bolivia. Life used to be very different for them. They would cook for rich mountaineers from all over the world and look after their needs as they prepared to reach the top of different peaks in the Andes. One day, as Lydia was preparing a meal for the mountaineers, she stopped and noticed the excitement on their faces as they prepared to climb the summit. She wondered what it felt like to get to the top of a mountain. When she asked her mountain guide husband, he suggested trying it herself, which is exactly what she did. When Lydia's group of 11 women climbed their first peak at a height of just over 6,000 meters, they had no training. They learned to climb by watching experienced mountaineers in camp and by talking to the mountain guides. But of the 11 women who set out to climb that day, all of them kept at it and reached the summit. For future climbs, they decided to take mountaineering safety lessons to improve their knowledge and skills. This intrepid group of women called themselves the Climbing Cholitas, proudly asserting their Aymara origin and wearing their traditional long, colourful skirts, although they are not very practical for climbing. Even though they wear their traditional dresses rather than professional climbing gear, they do wear protective helmets and use proper climbing equipment. Cooks are not exactly well paid, so the women pool their money to pay for all of this gear. On the 23rd of January 2019, a group of 5 Cholitas achieved their dream and reached the highest peak in the Andes, Aconcagua, 6,962 meters. Despite some of the women being over 50, there's already talk of the Cholitas next attempting Everest.
Making games, not just playing them.
Layla Shabir didn't used to take video games too seriously when she was growing up. Now she's in charge of an organization called Girls Make Games. So, how did that happen? After school, Layla received a grant to study at the world-famous Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and eventually got a degree in economics. Thanks to her qualifications, she was quickly offered a job in finance, but, after a year, decided it wasn't for her. She then decided to do a PhD and become a professor, although that plan suddenly changed too when Layla met someone who opened her eyes to the serious educational potential in video games. Excited by the educational power of video games, Layla set up her own company. She was looking for somebody to work in her development team and was surprised when almost no women applied. She was disappointed to see that not many women were working in the games industry in general. The statistics point to the same problem. A 2017 report by Statista claimed that women make up 46% of the gaming population, but only 22% of the video games industry. The games industry is bigger than films and music combined, and so, if women are not employed to make games, their perspective and insights are left out of a whole area of entertainment which influences millions of people around the world. What's more, women are missing out on important job opportunities as creators, designers, producers, musicians, artists, and engineers. That's why, in 2014, Layla created Girls Make Games, which has already reached more than 6,000 girls in over 60 cities around the world. She aims to encourage more women to work in the games industry by organizing workshops where teams of girls compete against each other to make the best game. Layla is optimistic about how girls are going to influence the video games industry in the future. 1 pixel at a time.
Unit 2. Listening. Exercise 3.
Today, in this History Club podcast, we're going to talk about some people from the past whose important work is only now receiving the attention that it deserves. Our podcast is all about computers. No, not the machines. Before those existed, the word computer referred to a human profession. Here to tell us all about this is our history of science expert, Gillian Conway. Jill, computers were originally people, not machines. That's right, isn't it?
Exactly. Before digital computers existed, human computers would spend their day doing similar things. They would collect and analyse data, do equations, make complex calculations.
They were important in the design of aircraft, weren't they?
That's right. In Virginia, in the US, there was a special airbase called Langley Research Center, which employed a lot of human computers.
An interesting fact is that most of the computers were women, weren't they?
Yes. Even before the Second World War started, a group of 5 women had already been working for about 5 years in what they called the computer pool. And then, during the war, many American men were away fighting, so a lot more women started to work as computers.
What qualifications did they need?
To work at Langley, you generally needed to have a degree in maths. Before becoming computers, many of the women had been working as high school teachers. By 1945, over 3,000 people, mainly women, had found work as computers at Langley.
Now, before 1950, most of these people had been working on planes, hadn't they? But in the 1950s, the space race had begun, and most of the human computers started working for NASA.
Yes, for years and years, nobody talked much about the immense contribution that many of these women, including a very important group of African American women, made to space travel. It's true that after the war, digital computers began to do a lot of the work that human computers had been doing for years. But the human computers were still essential for 2 reasons. Firstly, they helped to program the digital computers. You have to remember that nobody had really used digital computers before. So these people were pioneers in computer science. And secondly, the human computers would check that the digital computers were getting the correct answers. Today, we don't trust our own answers and use digital computers to check them. But when people first used digital computers, it was just the opposite.
I heard that in 1962, when astronaut John Glenn was about to take off and orbit the Earth, he didn't trust the digital computer. He refused to take off until Katherine Johnson, an expert mathematician and computer scientist, had checked the calculations that would predict exactly where he was going to land.
That's right. Katherine Johnson also worked on Apollo 11 and the first moon landing, helping to decide where on the moon to land, considering orbits, gravity, etc. She prepared all the manual calculations for the astronauts so they could get back safely to Earth if the simple onboard computer failed. She even helped to write the first textbook on space travel. The amazing thing is that relatively few people had heard about Katherine and her colleagues until somebody wrote a book about them. They made a film of the book in 2016 called Hidden Figures. The year before, President Barack Obama had given her the Presidential Medal of Freedom at the age of 97. She received many medals and awards, but was very proud of letters she received from school children, asking about her work and telling her how she had inspired them to work in science.
That's why we wanted to remind our listeners of the important work that these women did. Gillian, thank you.
Unit 2. Developing Speaking. Exercises 2 and 3.
Here are some different reasons why it can be good for teenagers to do a weekend job. I'd like you to talk to each other about how important you think these reasons are.
OK, what do you think about earning money?
Well, I think it's quite important because money can give you some freedom and independence. You can use it to buy the things that you want without relying on your parents.
Maybe, but I don't think it's essential to earn money when you're a teenager and still at school. I mean, it's nice to have some extra money, but usually your parents can help you to buy what you need.
That's true. What about becoming more responsible?
I think that's a good reason for us to work. I imagine that when you work, there are no excuses if you're late or if you don't do your job well. So when you do a weekend job, you have no alternative. You have to become more responsible and disciplined.
Yes, I agree. What about helping to choose your future profession?
I think it depends on what you do. But most weekend jobs are things like working in a supermarket or in a restaurant, things like that. That's not the kind of job I want to do when I finish studying, so I don't think that'll help me much. Do you agree?
Yes, I think you're right. I don't think there's usually much connection between weekend jobs for teenagers and life after school or university.
And what about making new friends?
I think making friends is really important, but I don't think a weekend job helps you to make new friends really, because you're probably so busy that you don't have time to chat with the people you work with or with customers if you deal with the public.
Yes, but you could meet after work. You know, hang out with your colleagues and share stories and experiences. I think it's good to have friends outside of school.
I see what you mean. And learning new skills. Do you think that's an important reason for doing a weekend job?
Yes, I think that's a really good reason. I imagine the skills you need at work are often quite different from the skills you learn at school, so it's really interesting to learn to do different kinds of things.
Yeah, things like teamwork, problem solving, they're really useful.
Thank you. Now you have about a minute to decide which of those reasons you think is the most important.
I think becoming responsible is the most important. Starting work means you're the only one who's responsible for your actions. Your parents or teachers can't help you or do anything for you. It's just your responsibility.
I agree up to a point, but learning new skills involves lots of other things too, not just responsibility. You can get training in lots of useful, practical things, even if you're just working in a cafe or a shop or something.
That's true. And if you learn new skills, you can talk about them when you apply to go to university or for a job afterwards.
Yes, because not everybody has those skills, so you have an advantage over other people.
OK, so why don't we say learning new skills then?
Sure, let's do that.
Thank you.
Unit 3. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 2. Words connected with transport and travel. 1.
Carbon emission. Catch. Commute. Crew. Cruise. Departure lounge. Driver. Flight. Gate. Get in. Get out. Get on. Get off. Give somebody a lift. Land. Launch. Miss. Motorway. overtake, platform, port, rail, road sign, seatbelt, steering wheel, take off, traffic jam, tire, vehicle, waiting room, wheel.
Unit 3. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 3. Words connected with transport and travel. 2.
Arrival, board, cancellation, contactless, delay, destination, fare, fine, lost property, network, off-peak, passenger, route, ticket inspector, travel update, zone.
Unit 3. Reading. Driving. The future.
In the next 20 or 30 years, cars will change dramatically. In fact, several of the biggest changes have already begun. Firstly, instead of being a luxury for a relatively limited group of car owners, fully electric cars will become the norm. According to the International Energy Agency, by 2040, there will be nearly 1 billion completely electric vehicles on the road. Many countries have decided that they are going to stop the sale of petrol or diesel cars. In the UK's case, this will happen by the year 2040 at the latest. Right now, in the UK alone, there are approximately 31 million cars on the road, making cars and lorries a major source of carbon dioxide, the gas most responsible for global warming. Will electric cars solve the problem of pollution completely? It's clear that all these new cars are going to need lots of electricity, and this will still cause some pollution. But it will certainly be less than from fossil fuels. Unfortunately, however, much of the pollution caused by driving comes from cars braking, releasing microplastics from tyres and the road surface into the air. This problem won't disappear with electric cars. As for noise pollution, electric cars are almost silent. But that could lead to accidents with cyclists and pedestrians, who are unable to hear cars approaching. So a new European law says that electric cars will have to start producing noises so that people know they are there. Meanwhile, another major change to cars has also already begun, thanks to self-driving, driverless, or autonomous cars. There are officially 5 levels of autonomy. Today, most cars that we call self-driving are only partially autonomous, between levels 2 and 3. The car handles some aspects of driving, and the driver can occasionally take their eyes off the road very briefly. Despite the misleading things we hear in the press, it will still be a while before we sit inside a vehicle with no steering wheel and fall asleep as it drives us away. Level 5. The technology is getting there, but we shouldn't underestimate the need for significant improvements to roads and road signs to avoid accidents with autonomous vehicles. Talking of accidents, One major question is to decide who will be legally responsible when you have an accident in a self-driving car. You or the car manufacturer. It seems then that cars of the future will be electric, driverless, and possibly shared. At the moment, most commuters drive to work alone. It takes a lot of energy, electrical or otherwise, to power so many cars for so few people. It also takes a lot of space for parking. According to one calculation in a study by the Journal of the American Planning Association, 14% of the county of Los Angeles is used exclusively for parking. Owning a car is expensive, and cars spend 96% of their time not moving. So maybe people will just take a taxi, driverless, electric, to work. Most of these vehicles only need to be big enough for one person. You won't need a driver, remember? On the other hand, the people who do decide to own a car will probably have much bigger vehicles that will also serve as an office space, bedroom, and living room. Looking further to the future, our driverless electric cars will one day be able to take to the sky. In a few years, a company called Terrafugia says it will have a vehicle that will be able to take off, fly, and land autonomously. When you find yourself in a traffic jam, you'll be able to get up and away to escape the motorway. Or perhaps cars will simply disappear completely. Next summer, a Chinese company is testing a large drone that they hope will be capable of carrying a single passenger 23 minutes, cruising at an average speed of nearly 100 kilometers per hour at a maximum height of over 3,000 meters. The passenger will simply enter their destination into a smartphone app, and the drone will do the rest. It seems that, in the long term, the future of driving will have no need for cars, drivers, or even roads.
Unit 3. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3.
Today's podcast is looking at the transport of the future, and also at somebody who's doing a lot of work on it, engineer and entrepreneur Elon Musk. Here's Tyler Hansen to tell us about some of his company's projects.
Well, his company, Tesla, does a lot of work on electric cars, but it seems that soon he'll be working on an electric jet, too.
Didn't he actually say that in an Iron Man film?
He did, and Tony Stark tells him he'll make it happen. I think lots of companies will be making electric planes happen in the next few years.
Why?
Flying is probably the worst form of transport for the environment. Some experts reckon that planes are responsible for about 2 to 3% of all carbon dioxide emissions. Electric planes will reduce that. And Musk's projects, including this jet, focus above all on protecting the environment.
So, why hasn't he already produced one?
There are some electric planes already flying, of course. But somebody needs to invent lighter batteries before Musk can produce the type of eco-friendly plane he wants. That plane will be supersonic and have vertical takeoff and landing.
Maybe he can use some of the rocket technology from his SpaceX company. Talking of which, what would you say has been their biggest contribution to space travel so far?
Well, their Falcon Heavy rocket is the world's most powerful rocket and can carry heavy equipment into space. And the Dragon spacecraft has already taken lots of cargo to the International Space Station. That's been a really significant contribution. Above all, though, SpaceX has created easily reusable rockets, making space travel cheaper. It's interesting that many of Elon Musk's projects are just steps towards his #1 obsession, starting a colony on Mars. He expects that a rocket carrying astronauts will have landed on Mars by 2030, or even before. SpaceX is already working on a spacecraft that will be able to take 100 passengers there, and that could lead to space tourism, which Musk and others are very interested in developing, taking passengers to the moon or beyond. But Musk had what I personally think is an even more interesting idea. If you can take people all the way to Mars in a rocket, why not use the same rocket to take passengers anywhere on Earth? You can go anywhere in under an hour. Just imagine, people will be flying from New York to London in about 30 minutes.
Isn't that just science fiction?
Not at all. When they began making electric cars some years ago, nobody took them seriously. But soon we'll all be driving them. Personally, I think the greatest strength of any top engineer or entrepreneur isn't their incredible inventiveness. Yes, they have great ideas, but it's the fact that they never stop until their ideas become reality that stands out for me. Their ambition probably has a little to do with that, too.
Another one of Musk's ambitions is to see his Hyperloop work, isn't it?
Yes. Imagine sending vehicles with 40 passengers through tubes under or above the ground at a speed of 1,200 kilometers per hour. They had the idea in 2013, and people said it'll never happen. Less than 10 years later, a prototype system has already got to a speed of nearly 470 kilometers per hour. There's a lot to do yet, but it's all happening fast. Soon, with the Hyperloop, there'll be less pollution. There won't be traffic jams. It'll be safer than flying, and there will be no delays because of bad weather. And just think of the time saved. By 2030, they'll have been working on the Hyperloop for over 15 years, and the time of the journey from Washington, D.C. to New York will have gone from 3 hours by train to just half an hour.
Wow. Maybe science fiction will soon become science fact.
Unit 3. Developing Speaking. Exercises 2A and 3.
Both photographs show people with a type of transport. In the first photograph, the girl is flying a plane, whereas in the second photograph, the man is on a type of bicycle with just one wheel. I think it's probably called a unicycle. In both photos, the people seem quite young, and another similarity is that they're both alone. Of course, one big difference between the photos is that in the first photo, the girl is in the air. You can see the ground below. But in the second one, the man is on land. I think he's in the mountains. Another important difference is that the man is more in contact with nature because he's outdoors, while the girl is inside the plane looking out at nature. I think both people are feeling happy because it's fun doing what they're doing. They can both see amazing places while they're travelling. It's true that both activities are quite difficult. On the one hand, you probably need to do lots of lessons and tests to be able to fly a plane. On the other hand, it can't be easy learning to cycle with just one wheel. You probably need to practice a lot, and you probably fall a lot too. But I think both people are feeling happy because they learned to do these things well, even though they were difficult.
Unit 4. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 1. Personality adjectives. 1.
Broad-minded. Down to earth. Impetuous. Laid back. Outgoing. Reserved. Resourceful.
Unit 4. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 2. Personality adjectives. 2.
Considerate. Insecure. Moody. Resilient. Self-confident. Selfish. Tactful. Untrustworthy.
Unit 4. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 3. Personality adjectives. 3.
Big-headed. Cheerful. Easygoing. Energetic. Humble. Introverted. Loud. Loyal. Narrow-minded. Sensitive. Shy. Sociable. Tactless.
Unit 4. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 4. Idioms connected with personality.
A big mouth. A bright spark. A great laugh. A live wire. A pain in the neck. A party animal. A social butterfly. A wallflower.
Unit 4. Reading. Lucy's Reflections. Random thoughts about my life.
Let me tell you about something that happened to me recently. I went to a party. What's so special about that, you're wondering? Well, I hardly ever go to parties because, get ready for this, I don't like them much. I guess I'm the typical wallflower. As teenagers, it seems we almost have to feel guilty about that because people assume we should all be party animals. Anyway, I've just discovered something that's made me realize that it's okay to prefer quiet chats to loud crowds. So, I thought I'd share some of the ideas I learned from a book I've just read. It's called Quiet Power by Susan Cain. She suggests that being introverted isn't necessarily the same as being shy. When you're shy, you're quiet because you're afraid of what other people will think of you. Being introverted, on the other hand, is more a question of preferring situations that are quieter and less stimulating. I don't know about you, but I could relate to that immediately. Some of my friends like to fill their weekends with countless things to do and people to see. Me? I'm happy to spend the weekend painting, reading, and taking my dog for a walk. Here's the important message, though. It's okay to prefer quiet situations. It's true that society seems to pay more attention to extroverts. We're often given the idea that we should all be trying to be the life and soul of the party. But, as Susan Cain points out in her book, it's about time society paid more attention to what quiet people bring to the table too. They have special skills and qualities that extroverts just don't have. For example, most of us would agree that introverts tend to be more reflective and think things through more slowly and deliberately, whereas extroverts are more impetuous. In fact, some of the most creative people in history, like Bill Gates, for example, have been introverts. Think about when you do collaborative assignments at school. The loudest students tend to dominate and make quicker decisions, but it's usually the quieter people who see the bigger picture and are more focused on the task itself. After all, the quieter you are, the better you listen to everyone else. Now, don't get me wrong here. It's always better to have a mix of all different kinds of people working together. I just wonder whether the talents of the quieter members of the group are taken less seriously than they should be. It's important to remember that even if you are quiet, that doesn't mean that you can't do things like stand up and give a presentation that's just as good as anyone else's. You can rise to the occasion when you need to and push yourself to take centre stage. Afterwards, it's perfectly okay to recognise that, on the whole, you feel happier and more comfortable behind the scenes rather than in the spotlight. As I get older, I feel more and more confident that it's fine not to be a social butterfly. And I feel inspired enough after reading the book to give a presentation on this topic at school next week. I know I'll be nervous, but I think it's time to shout out loud that quiet is all right.
Unit 4. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3.
And the last genius we want to talk about in today's podcast is the man that many people consider to be the greatest genius of all, Leonardo da Vinci, and about his greatest masterpiece. Sylvia, what is Leonardo's greatest masterpiece? The Mona Lisa?
Yes, that is possibly his most famous masterpiece. But many people consider his real masterpiece to be his notebooks.
What do these notebooks contain?
Everything. On the same page you have pictures of human anatomy, of flying machines, a diagram explaining the movement of water, and then lots of to-do lists, things Leonardo wrote down that he wanted to do, to investigate, or to learn when he had more free time.
Like what?
Calculate the size of Milan and its suburbs. Describe the jaw of a crocodile. Construct glasses to see the moon larger. Discover how efficient the water can be faster than a bird in the sky. Hundreds of things. His curiosity was never ending.
It's not easy to read the notebooks at first, is it?
No. You might know that Leonardo was able to write backwards, from right to left. It's called mirror script because you need a mirror to be able to read the words the right way. Actually, Leonardo could write with his right hand and with his left, and some people even claim he could write with both at the same time, or write with one and draw with the other.
Brilliant.
He wrote a lot too. He covered more than 7,000 pages, and because paper was expensive, he filled nearly every centimetre with his words and pictures. He wrote about geography, geology, architecture, maps, engineering. There are his famous pictures of a statue of a horse that he was going to build in Milan. It was going to be over 7 metres high. He was able to design and build a model, but he never managed to build the final bronze statue himself. 500 years later, a sculptor called Nina Akamu succeeded in making a full-size version of the statue from Leonardo's notebooks.
Leonardo was often unable to finish his projects, wasn't he?
Yes, he only left us about 15 completed paintings. That's partly because he was a perfectionist. He was also just quite slow. Maybe he couldn't always finish things because he continually jumped around from one new idea to the next. Personally, I think he was more interested in the process than in the result. In the journey, not the destination.
His scientific drawings were so far ahead of their time, weren't they?
Yes. He had ideas for robots and helicopters that people were only able to make hundreds of years later. There are some things he thought up that maybe we'll never be able to create. Scientists, doctors and engineers are still examining his notes today. For example, at Stanford University, they're looking at Leonardo's drawings of bird wings and trying to answer some of his questions about flight. And from that, they're trying to design a mechanical bird that one day will be able to copy a bird's flight perfectly.
So we can still learn from Leonardo's notebooks today?
Absolutely. Just looking at the pages of his notebooks, you can see how open-minded Leonardo was. He was curious and passionate about the world. He didn't separate art from science or engineering. And I think it's by being able to make connections across the worlds of art, science and technology that we can still innovate and create new things. Sometimes his ideas were mad, but by mixing fantasy and reality, we can come up with new inventions, new technology, new art. That's what we can learn today from Leonardo's notebooks.
Unit 4. Developing Speaking. Exercises 3 and 4.
In this presentation, I'm going to talk about Rosa Parks. I'd like to begin by saying that Rosa was an incredibly influential person in history who, thanks to her actions, changed the situation for black people in the US. I'm going to explain how. First of all, it's important to know that in 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama, black people couldn't go to the same shops or schools as white people. They could travel on the same buses, but they couldn't sit in the same places. White people sat at the front and black people at the back. Furthermore, when the bus was full, black people sitting at the back of the bus had to give up their seat for white people. One day, the bus driver told Rosa to stand up because there weren't enough seats in the front section for all the white passengers. Rosa was quite quiet and reserved, but she was tired of the unfairness of the situation and refused to stand up. The police came and arrested her, and she spent the night in prison. Rosa's friends heard about what she had done. They asked every single black person to stop using any of the buses in the city until they changed the law. Finally, the protest worked, and Rosa's friends and supporters managed to change the law. The point I'm trying to make is that Rosa's simple but brave actions were highly inspirational for the whole black community. She stood up for her rights in a peaceful way and encouraged others to do the same. In short, she brought about a positive change in society and completely deserved the 3 medals she received before her death in 2005.
Unit 5. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 2. Spending and saving money 1.
ATM, cash point. Bank charge, fee. Bank charge, bank fee. Bargain. Change. Credit, debit card. Credit card, debit card. Discount. Banknote. Receipt. Refund. Sale. Save. Take out money. Waste money.
Unit 5. Vocabulary and Context. Exercise 3. Spending and saving money 2.
Account. Afford. Allowance. Budget. Cash. Coin. Get into debt. Payment. purchase. Spend on. Spending habits. Swipe. Tax. Value.
Unit 5. Reading. Without a penny in their pockets.
It was the first country in Europe to adopt banknotes back in 1661. However, now it seems that in a few years, Sweden will become the world's first country to do away with cash completely. In fact, they are nearly there already. Only 13% of the population rely on notes and coins, and over 80% of all purchases are cashless. To make sure nobody is excluded, anyone over 7 is allowed to have a debit card, as long as they have their parents' permission. That means that 97% of the population have a card. It's curious to think that most young people growing up in Sweden today will probably never see or use cash. One reason why this is happening in Sweden is because it is one of the world's most technologically advanced nations. In 2012, the 6 biggest banks there joined together to create a mobile payment platform that made electronic payments easier. The application, called Swish, is so widely used now that people generally don't have to carry cash and needn't worry about having the correct change. When tourists come to Sweden, they realise they needn't have changed their dollars or euros for local currency because you just can't use it anywhere, not even on public transport. There are fewer bank robberies now in Sweden because banks don't keep cash. There are no problems with theft near cash points. The staff in shops and restaurants all feel safer too because they no longer worry about protecting cash. A cashless society may not be perfect though. When all payments are made through your phone, if your battery runs out, so does your money. Many people are worried about hackers too, not to mention what companies can do with all the information they get about our spending habits. And you'd better keep track of your money because it's easy to get into debt when all you need to do to buy things is swipe your phone or card without counting out those hard-earned notes and coins.
Unusual tax facts.
Tax is a way to raise money to pay for all sorts of things that a country needs, from roads to healthcare. Everybody who works has to pay it, and we also pay it on a wide range of goods. In the UK, a tax of 20% is added to the price of chocolate bars, for example. Historically, there have been some highly unusual taxes. At the end of the 17th century, Tsar Peter the Great put a tax on beards. This was a clever way to encourage people to shave, as he wanted them to adopt the Western style, and also to show loyalty towards him. Most people didn't have to do anything, but people with beards weren't allowed to keep them unless they paid. They then received a copper coin with a moustache and beard to prove they had paid. In England, King Henry VIII did something similar, but with different results. With his law, the longer your beard, the more you paid. The elite grew longer beards just to prove their stature. In England, there has been a long tradition of trying to tax homes, and of trying to dodge these taxes. In 1660, there was a tax on fireplaces. People bricked them up to hide them. In 1696, they introduced a tax where you paid more according to the number of windows you had. People built houses with very few windows, leading to health problems. Next, there was a tax on bricks. Builders began to use bigger and therefore fewer bricks to save money. One UK tax that has lasted longer is a kind of tax on televisions. Traditionally, if you own a television, you must pay an annual fee called a television licence. This money finances the BBC and keeps it advert-free. The penalty for not having a licence is a large fine. Last year, 240,000 people were caught. If you get a fine, you ought to pay it fast, or you could go to prison.
Unit 5. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3.
Now the section of our programme that we all love. Good Luck Stories, where we tell you some of this week's good news. Today, all our stories are about people who've been lucky with money.
Story number 1.
Lisa Grace and Adam Staples had spent 15 years trying to discover treasure, and they've finally done it. The couple were in a field, training some friends to find treasure under the ground, in an area they thought was promising, and were delighted when one of their group found an amazing 1,000-year-old silver coin. Then they found 3 more coins, then 30. After 5 hours of digging, they had found 2,528 ancient coins. They think the owner must have been a rich man trying to avoid paying tax. He must have hidden the money, and then may have forgotten where, or might have died before he could get the coins back. Lisa and Adam took the coins to a museum. If a judge decides that they are officially treasure, their value will be assessed. It could be around £5 million, but nothing is guaranteed yet. Adam and Lisa will have to share the money with the other members of their group and with the owners of the land where they found the coins.
Story number 2.
Lake Königssee in Bavaria is famous for being one of the most beautiful lakes in Germany. A 16-year-old girl was swimming at a depth of about 2 meters when she came across a gold bar sitting on the bottom of the lake. The bar weighed 500 grams and was worth nearly $18,000. So the girl informed the police. The authorities then tried to identify the owner, but, after a 6-month investigation, were unsuccessful. The girl was able to keep her find. Some say the gold may have been lost in the Second World War, but the police found a stamp on it, which showed it was made after 1980, so it can't have been connected. Nobody knows who the owner was or how the gold ended up in the lake. Police divers were unable to find any more gold there. The girl, who was on holiday at the time, must have just been very lucky.
Story number 3.
23-year-old Ella Johansson was travelling by train to Leeds after the holidays. She called her mother and told her how upset she was about her financial situation. She'd got into debt in her final year at university after giving up her part-time job to concentrate on her studies. After the phone call, Ella was tired and fell asleep. When she woke up, she made an amazing discovery. Somebody had left her £100 under a paper towel. The amount was just enough to solve her financial problems. Since then, she has been using social media to try to identify her mystery helper. They may not necessarily be well off, but they must clearly have a very big heart. Ella saw the action as proof that there are good people in the world. To repay the stranger's act of kindness, she has said that she will do volunteer work for a charity.
Story number 4.
A cleaner in a South Korean airport might become very rich thanks to his find. The man discovered 7 gold bars while he was cleaning a bin. The bars, weighing 1 kilo each, are worth around $325,000. The cleaner must have got quite a shock when he found the heavy bars wrapped in newspaper. Strange luggage for a vacation. The owner of the gold must have had something to hide, because he was clearly afraid of trying to pass the gold through customs. South Korean law says that a person who finds something of value can keep it if nobody claims it in the next 6 months. Unfortunately, however, there's a chance that this particular good luck story may not finish so well. The airport has said that the law does not apply in this case because the cleaner was working and finding lost objects was simply part of his job. The next 6 months can't be easy for the cleaner as he waits for the final decision.
Some great stories this week. Now, back to the music.
Unit 5. Developing Speaking. Exercise 3.
Let me think. Both photographs show people shopping, but in the first photograph, it looks like the people are in some type of market, whereas in the second photograph, they're shopping in a big modern shopping centre. One big difference between the photos is that in the first picture, we know that some of the people are outdoors because we can see they're wearing coats. But in the second photo, they must be indoors because you can see that there's some type of glass ceiling above them, keeping out the rain or cold. And the market in the first photo must have been there for a long time because I think it says since 1854 to the left of the statue of the horse, which is more or less in the middle of the photo. But it looks like the shopping centre must be much more modern because there are different floors and lots of bright lights. I think that the people have chosen to go to these two types of places for different reasons. I mean, in the first photo, people might have chosen to go to a market like this because, above all, they want to have a nice walk, have a chat, get some fresh air, or see interesting things. But they might not really be visiting the market to go and buy something. On the other hand, I think that people go to modern shopping centres because they really want to buy something specific, like clothes or toys or a present for somebody. It's true that one big advantage of buying in a market like in the first photo is that you can come across old things that are unique and special, whereas in a modern shopping centre, all the shops and products are basically the same. Personally, I like buying in both these different places and spending time with my friends there. But if I was going to buy clothes or something that I knew I wanted, I would choose the modern shopping centre, definitely.
Unit 6. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 1. Parts of the body.
Ankle, chest, eyebrow, eyelash, eyelid, forehead, heel, hip, kidney, liver, lungs, muscle, nail, ribs, thigh, waist.
Unit 6. Vocabulary in context. Exercise 2. Health and medical care. 1.
A&E. Accident and emergency. Broken. Fracture. Injury. Operation. Painful. Painkiller. Physiotherapy. X-ray.
Unit 6. Vocabulary in context. Exercise 3. Health and medical care. 2.
Ache. Exhaustion. Fever. Get better. Infectious. Injection. Lower. Prescription. Sick. Sneeze. Sore. Symptom. Treat.
Unit 6. Reading. Health and medicine in a dystopian future.
It could come from a nuclear war, a meteor, or any of the hundreds of disasters that appear in all the dystopian TV series, films and novels that we are obsessed with nowadays. But somehow, in those stories, even in the worst-case situations, life seems to go on relatively unchanged. But let's imagine this world for a second. For a few weeks, or months maybe, the things we're used to may still be around. Bottled water, canned food, medicine, some basic technology. But then, how would we cope if we had to start civilization again from scratch? If we think about some of the fundamental knowledge needed, it will help our chances of survival. Health and medicine will be one of our most important challenges, as every injury could be fatal. An open fracture of the leg would be lethal unless you received medical treatment, since even a small cut could lead to an infection and blood poisoning. In this imaginary future, infectious diseases would be the biggest problem. Understanding basic sanitation and hygiene could save your life. We all know now that if you wash your hands regularly, you protect yourself from potentially life-threatening diseases and parasites. The other key strategy would be making sure your drinking water wasn't contaminated. It was only as recently as the 1850s that experts realised the importance of these two basic health measures. It's worth pointing out that if you do pick up some type of food poisoning, you shouldn't need any complex medication to survive. Since the 1970s, the widely adopted treatment is to drink a litre of clean water with a tablespoon of salt and 3 tablespoons of sugar. As long as you had clean water, you'd generally be okay. But since there would be no water coming from taps, you would have to prepare the water yourself. If you boil water, you make it safe to drink. But you need fuel for that. The simplest method for water disinfection is a technique being taught around the developing world by the World Health Organization. Simply fill a plastic bottle with suspect water and leave it in bright sunshine for a day or 2. The ultraviolet rays from the sun pass right through the bottle and kill anything harmful in the water. Now we have water, but what medicines would be available? Many modern drugs and treatments come from plants, and herbal medicine is as old as civilization itself. Almost 2,500 years ago, Hippocrates recommended biting the bark of the willow tree to relieve pain and control fever, as they did in ancient China too. The essential oil extracted from lavender has antiseptic and anti-inflammatory qualities when used as an external cream, and menthol, from mint plants, can have a cooling effect on the skin to relieve pain. Provided that you had some of these natural resources nearby, you'd have the beginning of a medicine cabinet. But you would need to be careful in case you took too much of any active ingredients. However, for most serious diseases, simple herbal remedies are not effective. Today's medicines are highly complex. When they do contain natural plant extracts, these have been modified to strengthen their effect and/or reduce side effects. This is how willow bark has been transformed into the most widely used drug in history, aspirin, keeping its pain-killing properties, but reducing the side effect of stomach pains. In short, if we survived something like a nuclear war, we would need to rediscover all this knowledge and recreate all this technical expertise. So, maybe the key lesson is to realise how sophisticated society is today and how many amazing advances have been made over time to improve the quality of our lives. If we look after the incredible world we have today, we won't need to waste time starting again from zero.
Unit 6. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3. Speaker 1.
My favourite sport is called Pilates. I saw a TV programme about it once and thought it looked interesting. Maybe people don't take it seriously because you use big rubber balls and bands and do a lot of exercises on mats on the floor. The idea is that it improves strength and flexibility by controlling your breathing. You don't sweat much, but you use muscles you didn't know you had. I wish people wouldn't make fun of Pilates. People ask me why I do it. Obviously, the main reason is I enjoy it. If I didn't like it, I would have stopped a long time ago. And you aren't just sitting around doing nothing. You don't seem to be making much effort, but you are, believe me.
Speaker 2.
I only started swimming seriously last year. The thing is, I used to run 5 times a week, but my knees started giving me problems. My doctor told me I shouldn't run so much because the impact was bad for me. He recommended swimming. I wasn't mad about the idea at first, but I found that I really enjoyed it. The only thing is, I wish I'd learnt to swim properly when I was a kid, because it's difficult to change bad habits when you're older. If I'd started to swim when I was younger, I'd be a much better swimmer now. But at least when I swim, I know that I'm exercising my whole body. Arms, legs, chest, stomach. It's really complete and very tiring.
Speaker 3.
When I was 8, I started playing basketball at school in a team. I found that I was quite good. I got better and better and became the captain of the team. I played most days of the week and only ever thought about basketball. The only problem is that I wasn't very tall. In fact, I'm still not very tall. I wish I was taller. It makes a big difference in basketball. When I got older, I was still good with the ball, but I couldn't get past the defense because they were all taller than me. But that's when I realized that I didn't care anymore about being the best or about winning matches. I just wanted to play to keep fit and be with my friends. Now I wish I had just played for enjoyment when I was younger. I still play in a team now, but just for fun.
Speaker 4.
I love water sports, even though I'm not actually a very good swimmer. I love doing sport on the water rather than in it. Surfing and windsurfing are my favourite sports. Just that feeling of being free and in touch with nature. It's magic. It takes me 2 hours to get to the sea from where I live. That's why I only started surfing and windsurfing when I was 16. If I'd lived closer to the sea, I would have begun much earlier, I'm sure. But I soon learnt, and people say I'm really good at it. It's quite an expensive sport because you need to buy all the equipment and to pay for accommodation and actually get to the coast.
Speaker 5.
2 years ago, my parents gave me a special present. They paid for me to do a scuba diving course because I'd passed all my exams and got really good marks. If I hadn't passed, they wouldn't have let me do it, I'm sure. In fact, I was the only teenager on the course. The rest were all between 25 and 50. You can't just go and dive in the sea straight away. You have to study some theory first to know how to calculate how much oxygen you have and how much time you can stay underwater. Then we went to a swimming pool where we were only 1 metre under the water. But some people got really nervous. I was just the opposite. Anyway, after 5 pool dives, we finally went into the sea and did 4 dives there. On the last dive, we went 20 metres down. I loved every minute of it and was really proud to get my certificate.
Unit 6. Developing Speaking. Exercise 3.
I'd like you to imagine that your school wants to encourage students to live healthier lives. Here are some ideas that they are thinking about and a question for you to discuss. Talk to each other about how these ideas could encourage students to live healthier lives.
OK, what do you think about cookery classes?
Well, I think they could be really useful because they could help us to prepare healthy meals.
I agree. We'd have a better idea about which food and ingredients are good or bad for us. And if we cooked our own meals, we wouldn't eat so much junk food.
Yes. What about the idea of having a school sports day?
It depends what that means exactly. I suppose if everybody took part, it would help them to get some exercise.
That's true. And maybe some people would realise that they aren't as fit as they should be, and that might encourage them to do more sport, which is really important for a healthy life.
Yes. I think that a talk by a doctor could be useful too, because a doctor can explain how your body works and what happens when you don't eat a balanced diet or take exercise.
Yes, I think you're right. Maybe they could explain about the risks of heart disease and things like that. And what about a weekend in the country?
I'm not sure. I suppose it could be useful because it's quite relaxing and it's good to get fresh air.
Yes, as long as the idea is to spend the time outdoors, walking or doing sport. And what about the last one? A week's free membership of a gym or sports club?
That could be really useful because you could try out different sports or exercises and see what activities you like.
Yes, and if you enjoy doing that, you can carry on afterwards. I think that would definitely encourage you to have a healthy lifestyle.
Now you have a minute to decide which 2 ideas you think are the best.
I think we should choose a talk by a doctor. I think that would be really useful because doctors are experts in anything connected with your health.
I see what you mean, but some students might not find it interesting enough. It might be too technical or scientific. In my opinion, cookery classes might be a better choice because they're really practical and it would be different from our usual classes.
Yes, you're right. I think another good choice is the week's free membership to a gym or sports club. That would give everybody a chance to try out a sport. What do you think?
Yes, that's a great idea. That way we'd have one choice that helps with diet and another that helps with exercise and sport.
Yes, because a lot of people already go to the country for the weekend. And a week's free membership of a sports club is better than just one day of sport at school.
OK, let's choose the cookery classes and membership of a gym.
Sure.
Thank you.
Unit 7. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 1. Film, fiction and music genres.
Action. Animation. Crime. Dance. Electronic. Folk. Historical. Horror. Indie. Metal. Punk. R&B. Rap. Rom-com. Sci-fi. Soul. Thriller.
Unit 7. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 2. Words connected with music.
Album. Chart. Download. Live. Lyrics. Make it. Performance. Record. Songwriter. Stage. Tour. Track.
Unit 7. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 3. Words connected with film.
Audience. Box office. Ending. Main. Plot. Screenplay. Sequel. Soundtrack. Star. Villain.
Unit 7. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 4. Adjectives to use in reviews.
Amusing. Cliched. Convincing. Fast-moving. Gripping. Hilarious. Inspiring. Intriguing. Moving. Predictable. Realistic. Stunning. Well produced.
Unit 7. Reading. Free short story vending machines receive rave reviews. 1.
Vending machines which serve cold drinks and snacks are nothing new. But at Canary Wharf in London, there are 3 brand new vending machines which offer you free short stories at the press of a button. You choose the length of the story you want to read, 1, 3 or 5 minutes, then select a story from genre such as crime, science fiction or romance. Finally, the machine prints out your story on eco-friendly paper and you're all set to read your new story. The Canary Wharf group said they had decided to install the machines after new research involving 2,000 UK adults found that 36% had given up on at least one book in the last year due to lack of time, and 30% had not finished a book in over 6 months. However, an incredible 70% said they'd prefer to get lost in a good book than waste time on social media.
2.
The reaction to the vending machines has been incredibly positive. Although the fact that the stories are free and print off in a few seconds undoubtedly helps, that's not the only reason. Every single day, says Paresh Raikura, I'm on the lookout for something new to read. On his hour-long commute to Canary Wharf, he picks up a magazine or newspaper, but says, I've stopped reading all the long novels I used to read. Why? Too long. Lack of time. Once you start, you can't stop. Give us something that we can read in the time it takes to listen to a pop song, and we might actually make it to the end.
3.
I think it's cool just to get people reading, says Babita Bismal, who commutes from North London. I have children, and I can see them getting addicted to their phones. I'm almost encouraging them to watch TV instead. She has printed off a 5-minute story, A Light in the Storm, by Thierry Covelot, and will try it on her 12 and 17-year-olds later. Other commuters feel the same way and are grateful for anything that can pull them away from their smartphones. I love reading, says Sam Rankin, a receptionist and trainee barber, but it's so nice to have something on a piece of paper, something tangible. These days, everything is on a phone. She has printed off a 1-minute story called The Death of Mr. Robinson that has been specially written for the project by best-selling novelist Anthony Horowitz.
4.
So what's it like for an author to write one of these stories that last just 1 minute? Horowitz decided to write a crime story for the machine and admitted it had been a challenge to condense the genre into such a short form. It was the challenge of writing a story that could be read between 2 stations, not just a short story, but a very short story, he said. Because I love mystery and whodunits, the question of if it would be possible to write a proper whodunit with a solution which made you smile in such a short amount of space was irresistible. The whole notion amused me. He said it had taken 3 or 4 days to write his story. The idea of using that little chunk of your day for something that entertains you, something which is, with a very small L, literature, is appealing.
5.
Generally speaking, novels have become shorter than, say, 100 years ago, when there were fewer leisure activities on offer. In this age of browsing and messaging, fiction, whether short or long, can help us relax from the stress and chaos of life. Machines like those at Canary Wharf are clearly a great idea if they inspire and encourage us to read some fiction, even for just 60 seconds a day.
Unit 7. Developing Vocabulary. Exercise 2.
Best-selling. Download. Eco-friendly. Screenplay.
Unit 7. Listening. Exercises 2A and 2B.
Today on Teen Arts, we're looking at how story-sharing websites are changing the way teens read fiction. Here with us is an expert on these reading apps, Rachel Jensen. Rachel, how popular are these websites today?
Incredibly popular. Wattpad is one of the most successful story-sharing websites. In 2019, they claimed they had 70 million users and more than 500 million stories in over 50 languages.
Wow. Rachel, can you just explain what story-sharing websites are for people who are new to them?
They're platforms where anybody is free to write a story and share it with others.
What genres?
Horror, suspense, historical fiction. I'd say romance is the most popular genre, to be honest. And fan fiction is very close too. You know, people taking famous characters or series and writing their own stories featuring those characters.
These writers have usually never written before, right? It's their first step in writing fiction.
Not necessarily, but yes, there are thousands of books written by teenagers, for example, and some are actually using smartphones to write their stories.
Do people always use smartphones or tablets to read the stories?
They've calculated that between 80 and 90% of people are using mobile devices. Wattpad even began an app called Tap, where the stories come in the form of text messages, like you're reading a private conversation on someone's phone.
I've heard these websites help young people to learn how to become writers. How do they do that?
Mainly thanks to the dynamic relationship between reader and writer. I mean, websites and online shops usually encourage book reviews. But on a website like Wattpad, they want as much information from readers as possible so people can leave comments at the end of a chapter, a paragraph, or even a sentence. So writers can clearly see if they've written a section well or not. For example, if all the readers can guess what's going to happen next after an important cliffhanger, authors know they have to work harder to surprise them.
Aren't the readers' comments usually very negative?
The opposite. Most comments offer useful, constructive feedback. I'm not saying all the stories on these platforms are well written. Some have got terrible spelling, grammatical mistakes, and totally unoriginal stories. But you can easily avoid those stories.
Can readers contact the authors directly?
Yes, they can even become friends with their favourite writers. And writers generally enjoy and appreciate that contact.
Some of these young writers have become rich and famous, haven't they?
Yes, the best example is possibly Beth Reekles. By 2012, her first book had got over 19 million reads on Wattpad. A big publisher offered to print her book, and it became a bestseller. The later movie adaptation of the story for Netflix was an instant hit too.
Wattpad actually uses a computer program to analyse all the data they get directly or indirectly from readers, doesn't it?
Yes, they can analyse everything, from deciding which genres are most popular to the best construction of sentences or use of words.
Meanwhile, the connection between these story-sharing sites and the world of TV and films is becoming closer and closer, isn't it?
Definitely. Hollywood basically looks at these reading apps to quickly find out what's popular with particular sections of the public and examine the readers' comments. So, for example, they can find stories that teens are raving about and turn them into series or movies. Wattpad announced that nearly 1,000 of its stories had already become physical books, TV shows, or films.
So it's really changing the world of arts and entertainment in general.
Yes, I think that's great, because often teenagers feel that big film or TV companies aren't interested in what they like. But now, teenage reading habits are directly influencing TV and films.
Thanks, Rachel. Sorry we haven't got more time to talk about this fascinating topic, But remember, listeners, if you haven't yet tried any story sharing apps, why don't you take a look soon? There's always something for everyone on most of these websites, so you've got no excuses for not reading fiction now.
Unit 7. Developing Speaking. Exercises 3 and 4.
So, what do you think about this article then?
Personally, I'm totally convinced that film awards ceremonies don't give enough importance to women. For instance, right now in the cinema, there are lots of women film directors, but not many of them win prizes.
I agree. You only have to think of all the male directors such as Quentin Tarantino, James Cameron, or George Lucas, who are always in the news. But you don't see many female filmmakers. You can't deny that the situation is changing, though. At the Sundance Film Festival recently, women filmmakers took the top prizes.
Yes, that's true. But don't forget that the person in charge of the voting was a famous female director. Maybe that's what the movie business needs. More diversity in the judging panels for these awards.
There's no doubt in my mind that that's the problem. Look at the voters in the Academy Awards. Just to give you an idea, I heard that 91% are white and 76% male.
Exactly. I really do think it's time that the situation changed. I think film judges should represent the whole range of people in our society, including young people like us.
I agree. That's the only way that these prizes will ever be fair.
Unit 8. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 1. Natural disasters and extreme weather.
Avalanche. Blizzard. Snowstorm. Downpour. Drought. Dust storm. Earthquake. Epidemic. Flood. Flash flood. Forest fire. Wildfire. Gale. Gust of wind. Hail. Heat wave. Hurricane. Landslide. Thunderstorm. Tornado. Torrential rain. Tsunami. Volcanic eruption.
Unit 8. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 2. Words connected with natural disasters. 1.
Aftershock. Casualty. Collapse. Debris. Devastating. Put out. Survivor. Tremor. Victim.
Unit 8. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 3. Words connected with natural disasters. 2.
Aid. Ash. Destruction. Evacuate. Evacuee. Molten lava. Relief worker. Spread. Supply. Sweep down.
Unit 8. Reading. Technology to the rescue.
MDAT, the International Disaster Database, indicates that the number of disasters has quadrupled since 1970. In 2018 alone, there were over 3,100 floods, storms, and other extreme events, according to the World Disasters Report. While experts continue to debate not only the causes for these natural disasters, but whether they are in fact going to become more common and destructive, the one certainty is that the need for technologies to provide prediction, safety, and relief in these disasters will only increase. Here are just some of the latest developments. Drones and Wi-Fi. For several years now, drones have been used more and more to help with disaster relief, putting humans less at risk. They can be used to assess damaged areas, assist with restoring power, and for search and rescue efforts. And now, the University of Texas at Arlington has developed a drone that is able to increase a Wi-Fi signal up to 50 times its normal reach. This can be vital in an area affected by a natural disaster because it is such a fast and reliable way to restore communications. It also means that the first relief workers who arrive at the scene of a natural disaster can coordinate easily, making their work much more effective. Meanwhile, strong Wi-Fi signals will also allow a large communication network amongst the people caught in the disaster area and between them and the outside world, simply by using their smartphones. Rescue robots. Apart from drones, robots are also being developed to help with disaster relief. Between 2012 and 2015, the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, held an annual competition aimed at creating humanoid robots capable of performing disaster relief and rescue tasks. The DARPA Robotics Challenge featured robots created by teams from all over the world, competing in a series of tasks such as avoiding obstacles, climbing stairs, and even driving a vehicle. In Germany, there is currently a rescue robot league, where robots from international teams operate in a simulated disaster area. The robots have to find the simulated victims hidden there using different sensors like video, infrared or 3D cameras, laser scanners, and ultrasound. The ultimate aim is to do so with a higher degree of autonomy and less remote control than at present. Emergency lighting. At Columbia University, an original way to illuminate a disaster zone has been created by architecture students Anna Stork and Andrea Schrester. They were inspired to create the Luminade when they heard about the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. Food and other supplies were being given out to the victims, but nothing was being done to help with the lack of light, a typical problem in disaster zones. Anna and Andrea created a solar-powered inflatable LED that's waterproof and floats. This makes it ideal for floods and storms and makes it easy to be distributed, particularly by air. It is only the size of a wallet when folded. The lights have been distributed in 10 countries so far, and the company has also begun a Give Light, Get Light program, which means when you buy a package priced between $18.95 to $26.95, somebody who needs light is given another package free.
Unit 8. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3.
Today, we look back on what is said to have been the worst natural disaster in the history of the US, the Galveston tragedy, often known as the Great Storm of 1900. Here to tell us about it is weather expert Max Davis. Max, what happened exactly at Galveston?
On the 8th of September 1900, a Category 4 hurricane hit the island city of Galveston in Texas. It's been claimed that between 6,000 and 12,000 people died in the tragedy.
Many of those people could have been saved, couldn't they?
Some, definitely. What we need to remember is that the US Weather Bureau was still a very new organisation, just 10 years old.
That's today's US National Weather Service, right?
Yes. The US Weather Bureau really didn't have much knowledge of hurricane science at that time. The Cubans were much better at following the progress of storms in the Caribbean.
Was there a US Weather Bureau office in Galveston at that time?
Yes, a man named Isaac Klein became the head of the Galveston branch in 1899. Klein, unfortunately, played quite a big part in the tragic events of 1900. In 1891, Klein is known to have written a newspaper article laughing at the idea of a hurricane causing any serious harm to Galveston Island. Until then, a large number of residents had wanted to build a sea wall on the island to protect shops, banks and homes from hurricanes. But thanks in part to the recommendations of Isaac Klein, they decided not to go ahead and build it.
Did anybody know exactly where the hurricane was headed at that moment?
Cuba did. This is another part of the tragedy. The Weather Bureau in Washington said the hurricane would pass over Florida and then New England, and that was completely wrong. Cuba knew it was heading to Galveston. It's believed that for political reasons, the director of the Bureau decided not to listen to their predictions.
So, what happened?
On the 4th of September, the Central Weather Bureau changed their minds and warned Galveston of possible danger. Then, on the 8th of September, the hurricane hit the island at midday, destroying 3,600 buildings. The winds are thought to have reached 135 miles per hour. That's nearly 220 kilometres per hour.
That's incredible. How did the Bureau respond?
At that time, only the Central US Weather Bureau could issue a hurricane warning. That was quite a slow and difficult process 100 years ago, as you can imagine. But given the immediacy of the emergency, it's known that on that day, Isaac Klein broke the rules and issued a warning without authorization from the head bureau. He claimed afterwards that his action saved thousands of lives. But he also claimed that on the morning of the hurricane, he actually visited the beach and low areas of the island personally, telling people to get to higher ground. That's what he wrote in his autobiography, but there were never any witnesses of this.
Were any lessons learnt from the Galveston tragedy?
Yes. The first lesson was that the Weather Bureau needed better communication in order to protect the public. Even more importantly, they also realised they needed to keep politics out of weather predictions. Blocking the reports that came from Cuba was an incredibly irresponsible thing to do.
So, would the Galveston tragedy have happened if the predictions had been better?
That's a good question. One thing is predicting the disaster, and another is the ability to evacuate so many people in so little time. Emergency plans for mass evacuation are believed to be just as important as hurricane forecasting. And, in fact, it's generally accepted that this is still a problem today. Hurricanes Katrina and Harvey caused tragedy in New Orleans and Houston not so long ago. The first in 2005 and Hurricane Harvey in 2017.
I suppose the good news is that we keep learning from our mistakes and improving our response to natural disasters.
Exactly.
Unit 8. Developing Speaking. Exercise 2B. 1,
25%.
2,
1/5.
3,
1/10.
4,
2/3.
5,
50%.
6.
4/5.
Unit 9. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 1. Technology and IT.
Desktop. Earphones. External hard drive. Headphones. Pen drive. Remote control. Sat-nav. Smart speaker. Webcam. Wireless charger. Wireless network.
Unit 9. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 2. Adjectives to describe technology.
Bendy. Flexible. Brittle. Chunky. Cutting edge. Durable. Eco-friendly. Heavy duty. High resolution. Lightweight. Metallic. Rust-proof. Tough. Unbreakable. Waterproof.
Unit 9. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 3. Words connected with technology.
Cloud. Earbud. Firewall. Freeze. Net. Storage. Stream. Tweet. Virus.
Unit 9. Reading. Tech World.
You may already know that pencils are made of graphite, but it might be news to you that with a simple stroke of a pencil, you can create a material which scientists and engineers around the world are all suddenly talking about. The material graphene was discovered by scientists around 1859. The problem was working out how to extract it from graphite. Then, in 2004, it was isolated by Professor Andrei Geim and Professor Konstantin Novoselov. They did this by playing about with sticky tape, pulling off and separating tiny flakes of graphene that were just 1 atom thick. The two scientists, who were researchers at the University of Manchester, won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2010 for this amazing work, creating the world's first 2D material. Some people believe that combining all of graphene's amazing properties could change the world as dramatically as the first industrial revolution did. A vast number of potential new products, processes and industries all stem from its amazing properties. It is many times stronger than steel. Some say 300. Yet it is incredibly lightweight and flexible. It is electrically and thermally conductive, meaning that electricity and heat can flow through it easily. But it's also transparent and incredibly thin. It seems there are literally no limits to graphene's potential applications. You could use it to produce handy devices like tablets or smartphones that you can fold up or bend round your wrist. Today's screens are made with highly conductive material. The problem is that it's brittle. Graphene, meanwhile, could be used to cover screens and make them unbreakable. Graphene could also be used to create the circuits for our computers and improve their speed, since research has shown that graphene chips are much faster than existing ones made from silicon. This has already made it possible for scientists at the University of Manchester to produce a tiny graphene transistor, smaller than any other. If you want to increase the lifespan of batteries, graphene could be the answer, making it not only faster to charge devices, but also helping devices to conserve energy for greater periods of time. Look no further than Northwestern University in the US, where researchers have produced graphene batteries that can go for 7 days without recharging. They could become part of our clothing, or even of our bodies, so that we can charge our devices wherever we are. Batteries could become flexible and light. Applied to transport, lighter batteries could reduce the weight of cars or planes. Graphene could make the wings of planes much lighter, protect the plane from lightning, and allow the plane to cut down on fuel. In other words, it could help produce the most environmentally friendly and best planes ever in terms of safety, strength, and weight. As we can see, graphene is turning science and technology upside down. And it is no longer the only 2D material in existence. As Konstantin Novoselov has explained, we used to be limited by the materials which existed in nature, but now, by combining different 2D materials, anybody can produce exactly the type of material which they need. One recent experiment involved feeding graphene to spiders. The result was a web that Spider-Man would be proud of. The silk in the web had 3 times the strength of natural web silk, making it as strong as steel, and bulletproof too. If you're still not convinced, how about using graphene to provide a layer on our skin that mosquitoes are unable to bite through? Contact lenses made from graphene could give you night vision. It could revolutionize sport with stronger, faster and better tennis rackets, skis, bikes or Formula One racing cars. In short, the possibilities are endless. And it's all thanks to 2 scientists with some sticky tape and a playful attitude to science.
Unit 9. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3.
Today, technology is all around us. Does that mean we rely on it too much? Is it changing how we think and behave? We asked you those questions. This is what you said.
Speaker 1.
I think the best example of how we depend on technology too much is the way we use sat-navs. When people start driving with sat-navs, they stop thinking. We believe technology is infallible, but you still have to use your eyes, ears and common sense. A man who drove into a lake said it was the GPS's fault because it had said it was a road, not a lake. That's no excuse. You're still the driver. It's true that sat-navs can reduce some of the stress of driving, but I heard about some research into the human brain. If you don't use the part of the brain that helps you to navigate, it gets smaller. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. That's the real problem with using technology so much, I reckon. So I like to get around as much as possible without online maps. I learn the route and that keeps my mind working. And I pay more attention to the real world around me.
Speaker 2.
I remember hearing about an experiment. They asked people a question. Are there any countries that have a flag with just one colour? The answer was in one of 5 different folders on a computer. They asked the people to try to remember the question and answer and to remember the folder where they could find it. They discovered that most people just remember the folder. They didn't bother to try to remember the information itself. Some say that shows we rely too much on computers and online reference material to give us all the answers. They say we don't exercise our memory anymore because we know that online we can find out anything. But seriously, why do I need to keep all that information about flags, capital cities, or important historical dates in my head if I can just go online and find it? If I don't have to remember all of that information, it makes it easier for me to remember all the really important things I need to do each day.
Speaker 3.
I think technology is a great thing and makes our lives much easier. But do you remember that virus in 2017 called WannaCry? It collapsed universities, hospitals, and some big companies. Hundreds of thousands of computers froze all over the world. It was chaos. The fact is, we depend on computers and technology for everything, whether it's buying and selling, controlling transport, medical operations, security. It's crazy to think that technology became the solution to all our problems, but now it is the problem because we need it to survive, not like in our grandparents' time. Cybercrime and cyber wars really scare me, and I'm not the only one to feel that way. I've heard that there are people in the US who are called preppers. They prepare themselves for the moment when there's a catastrophe and technology stops working. It's sensible not to rely on it so much.
Speaker 4.
If you stop to think about it for a second, we definitely do rely a lot on technology. We use the internet for information about what's happening in the world, about whatever we're studying at school or university, the weather, and to help us get around. But isn't that great? We used to rely on libraries and encyclopedias for information, but not everybody had easy access to them. Now, wherever and whoever you are, you can have immediate access to all of the knowledge you need, and it's constantly updated, and most of it's free. Some people say that having such easy access to all of that makes you become lazy or use your brain less. But technology saves us lots of time, and having more time helps us to use our brains differently. I mean, look at how young people today are better at multitasking than our parents. The way I see it, the world has always changed. We need to change with it.
Unit 9. Developing Speaking. Exercises 2 and 3A.
Well, it sounds quite normal to me that esports should become an Olympic sport. Esports are probably one of the most popular hobbies of millions of young people around the world today. They're probably more popular than any other sport right now, apart from football. So why shouldn't they play esports in the Olympics?
I'm not sure. Yes, they may be extremely popular, but not all hobbies are sports. I mean, chess has always been a very popular hobby, but not everybody would call chess a sport or an Olympic sport. You're not actually moving your body when you play.
Physical fitness isn't the only element in a sport.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
What I mean is that there are other sports where you hardly need to physically move. Take snooker or billiards, for example. They're sports because you need skill and strategy and training to play them, just like in esports. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, but I don't think you can compare the skills or training of an esports champion and, for example, the training and effort of an Olympic gold medal swimmer or athlete. They need to train their minds and their bodies.
Well, I think esports champions also have to make a big effort to win tournaments.
Are you saying that it's a big effort to spend hours and hours a day playing a video game? Is it a sacrifice when you're paid to spend your life doing your favourite hobby?
That's not quite what I meant. It's a sacrifice to be the best in your country, in the world. I'm sure it isn't all fun. There's a lot of stress and hard work involved if you want to win an esports competition.
OK. But the problem is that real sportsmen and women set a great example for young people because they're healthy and active. Having esports in the Olympics, on the other hand, could give young people the idea that sitting around playing video games all day is a good thing. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, but in other words, you don't think that esports players have any talents, that what they do is a waste of time. Well then, how do you explain the fact that they're so popular all around the world? The atmosphere at an esports event is great. Teams and individuals from all over the world come together to compete, but they respect each other. Isn't that what the Olympics is all about?
Well, yes, that's true. But I just don't see that they're actually real sports. That's all.
Unit 10. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 1. News sections.
Arts. Business. Columnists. Digital archive. Editor's blog. Entertainment. Environmental issues. Features. Gossip. Have your say. Health. Life and style. Money and finance. Obituaries. Science and tech. Showbiz. Sport. Travel. Trending topics. Weather forecast. World news.
Unit 10. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 3. Words frequently used in news headlines. 1.
Axe. Back. Blast. Clash. Hit. Link. Plea. Pledge. Probe. Riddle. Spark.
Unit 10. Vocabulary in Context. Exercise 4. Words frequently used in news headlines. 2.
Aid. Ban. Blaze. Boost. Boss. Head. Drama. Key. PM. Quit. Wed.
Unit 10. Reading. Unusual news from the natural world. Water bears land on moon.
A spaceship launched from Florida on the 22nd of February left some of the world's toughest animals on the moon. It was to land there on the 11th of April. When it was about to make its final descent, it suffered technical problems and crashed. As part of an ambitious plan to create a backup Earth, the spacecraft was going to land a time capsule with 30 million pages of information about our planet, samples of human DNA, and several thousand tardigrades, also known as water bears. These had been selected for the trip as they are the most indestructible creatures on Earth. Although the spaceship crashed at high speed, the experts who sent up the creatures believe their cargo may have lived. Tardigrades are able to survive for up to 30 years without food or water and endure extreme conditions like the deep, icy waters of Antarctica or the frozen vacuum of space. The animal's secret lies in its ability to enter a state of suspended animation. They can then reanimate with just a drop of water. They began their mission to the moon by being dried out and placed in a hard, clear material called resin. If this had broken during the crash, the tardigrades would be on the moon's surface right now, but not doing much. That's because they would only become active and reproduce if they had 3 basic things first: food, air, and, above all, water. So if they were found and brought back to Earth, they could come back to life. Experts at Oxford University estimate that they will survive on Earth until the sun dies, some 10 billion years from now. The only threat to their existence would be from an event causing Earth's oceans to boil away, leaving no chance of reanimation.
Exotic fruit sparks university evacuation.
Australian fire and rescue teams told everyone to leave the University of Canberra's library when someone reported a strong smell of gas. But a short while afterwards, they were all in for a big surprise. The library announced on social media that a durian fruit had caused the drama. This happened on Thursday as classes were ending for the term and students were preparing for an exam period. They were starting their exams the following Monday. The day after the evacuation, the library was back in use, provided the students could face the smell. Some people think durians have a very pleasant smell and taste, but others compare the aroma to onion with socks. If it didn't have such a strong smell, they wouldn't have been banned from some trains in Singapore or from many hotels across Asia. The library evacuation is not the first time the fruit has caused problems. In November, it caused a delay to an Indonesian flight. Online videos showed travellers and airline staff about to fight because the passengers were unwilling to take off with 2 tons of the fruit in the cargo hold. Some people thought the flight would be their last because of rumours that 2.7 tons of durian caused the tragic crash of another plane, something later shown without question to be untrue. Nevertheless, the sacks of fruit were eventually removed from the plane. The durian fruit is regarded by many as the king of fruits, particularly, but not only, in Southeast Asia. In 2019, somebody paid a record price of nearly £40,000 for a rare variety at a festival in Rayong, Thailand. And in China, a popular fast food chain has added durian chicken nuggets to its menu. The nuggets are covered in breadcrumbs on the outside and filled with just a hot, creamy durian paste. Reactions have been mixed, as so often happens with this curious, divisive fruit.
Unit 10. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3.
On today's programme, we're looking at the news. Why? Well, some people say that we are living in a golden age for news because we have free access to online stories from hundreds of different sources. For others, It's the worst time ever, because so much news nowadays is fake. It's becoming almost impossible to tell facts from lies. With us today is Jessica Powell, a professor in journalism. Jessica, I'd like to ask you what you think about the news today.
Well, citizen journalism has certainly changed the news a lot.
Today, anybody can report the news, can't they? You don't have to be a professional journalist to write an article or report.
That's right, and that helps news items to appear and spread much more quickly than before. And with the news, everybody always wants to be the first to break a story.
But there's a problem, isn't there? A story can spread very quickly, but perhaps nobody has actually checked it. Maybe the story contains genuine mistakes, or worse, information that the writer knew was not true. Maybe the writer is deliberately trying to create confusion. Would you agree that this is becoming an issue?
Yes, that's one of the problems today with citizen journalism. In theory, at least, professional journalists can't just print anything. They have to get the facts right. They have editors to check what they say, and they have a professional responsibility for telling the truth. But other people writing online don't have anybody checking their facts, and sometimes they may even deny responsibility for what they write.
Can I ask you if you have any advice for dealing with fake news?
The first thing to do when you read a news story online is find out where it appeared originally. Is it from a well-known newspaper, or is it just somebody's blog? Try to identify who the author is. Is it somebody well-known? Do they belong to a particular organisation, or have a personal connection with the people or the events in the story? Do they have some sort of bias?
You mentioned bias. I wonder if you could give an example of that.
Imagine there's an article about education, saying that public examinations are getting easier. The article will probably be very different if it's written by a teacher, a student, a politician, or a parent. We all have a bias, an attitude that makes you see the facts from a particular point of view that's different from other people. If it's sports journalism, a reporter may have a bias for a particular team because they support that team. A serious journalist will try to put aside their own personal bias, though.
Right. So, what else should we look out for?
Try to decide what the purpose of the article that you're reading is. Is it to give facts? Is it to give the writer's opinion on a particular question? Is it to make you laugh or persuade you of something? Are they trying to criticise somebody, to complain about a situation, or just to shock people?
What about the photos that go with the article? We can usually trust them, can't we? After all, they say that a picture speaks louder than words, don't they?
They do, but nowadays it depends. Usually photos or videos in serious professional newspapers or websites are reliable. But online, you have to be careful because it's easy to manipulate images. That's happened with photos for a long time now, but video is different. The next trend will be using technology to alter that. For example, by taking a video of somebody doing something bad or illegal and then replacing the person's face or head with that of a famous person.
So, we won't be able to believe our own eyes, will we?
Experts reckon that we'll need to use technology to check if a photo or video has been manipulated or not. It may become the only way we can trust what we see.
I wonder if you could give us any final words of advice, Jessica.
I would say that when you come across an unusual image or piece of news, see if you can find the same story or image on well-known websites, like national news services, that have a good reputation. That can give you a solid point of reference.
Unit 10. Grammar in Context 2. Exercises 3A and 3B. 1.
Everybody likes chocolate, don't they?
2.
Everybody likes chocolate, don't they?
Unit 10. Developing speaking. Exercises 3 and 4.
I'd like to begin by saying that, on the whole, I disagree with the statement. Let me explain why. Firstly, it's true that freedom of speech is an extremely important right. Journalists should be free to express their own opinions and to explain those opinions without worrying that they will be punished in some way for doing this. Having said that, I believe that there should be some sort of control to make sure that they always do this with respect and without saying things that could cause hate or violence towards other people. I also believe that there are moments when, in the interest of national or personal security, it is better if there is some sort of control over what information the press makes public. By giving away secret information, they may sometimes do more harm than good. Meanwhile, there's no denying that some celebrities use the press to become famous. But that doesn't mean that these people have no right to keep some personal details private. You can't argue with the fact that we all deserve respect and privacy, and so paparazzi who follow famous people, or even worse, their children, should not be allowed to make up stories about these people just because they are popular public figures. Let's not forget that some newspapers and magazines print stories which they know are false, just to sell more copies. To sum up, I accept that freedom of the press is important and that journalists should be able to express their own honest opinions. But that is not the same as allowing newspapers to write absolutely anything. If newspapers and magazines cannot take responsible decisions about what to print, I believe some sort of official organisation needs to control them.
Exam Success, Units 1 and 2. Exercise 7. 1.
Hi, David. Are you ready for the concert tonight? I'm really looking forward to hearing you play.
Hi, Marie. Yeah, I'm not sure. Of course, a part of me is excited, but then I keep thinking, what if nobody comes? It's my first time playing in public like this, so I'm really nervous.
Oh, you'll be fine. You've practiced so much, and I love the songs you've chosen.
Yes, I've spent the weekend going through it again and again, so I'm sure I don't forget anything.
Well, don't worry. Most of our class said they were coming.
We'll see.
2.
So, Marcus, what would you say is the best part of your chosen career?
Well, it's always great to do something that you really enjoy. Though there's a lot of variety in design work, and I have to say I don't love everything that I do. At the moment, I'm working for a big studio, but what I'm looking forward to is branching out on my own. And it's easy to do that as a designer once you've built up the contacts. I suspect I won't be earning a lot when I start, but the work soon builds up if you're good enough, so it's great to have that option.
3.
And in other news, the travel company beloved by students for their cheap holidays, Backpacker Travel Limited, is moving from its central location in London to a business park on the outskirts of Birmingham. Its fans will be disappointed, as the company's offices had become a popular meeting venue for young people looking for adventure in faraway places. However, the business has struggled in the last few years, as more and more travellers book directly online, so it needs to move to retain its profits. In fact, looking into the future, there's a question mark over how long it will survive, and it may need to change direction completely.
4.
Hi. Thanks for coming to the stand to find out about volunteer work in the environment. Now, you can see from all the pictures here that you can go to many different parts of the world to join a project, so it's great if you want to travel and help the planet. I went to Costa Rica, which was fantastic, because it gave me the chance to achieve something with a group of really interesting people, and that was what I personally wanted to get out of it. And you'll find the work is very different from what you're used to, so inevitably you get experience and increase your skill set. So, how can I help?
5.
Simon, we need to have a chat.
What about? I'm going to see my friends.
Well, maybe that's part of the problem. Your teacher called me today and asked me to speak to you.
Oh, was it about my homework?
She mentioned that, but I think she's more concerned that you're not concentrating in class and you spend a lot of time chatting. You can chat all evening to your friends. You don't need to do that in school.
Yeah, but sometimes I forget.
Well, you need to remember. Otherwise, it's going to start affecting how well you do in class and in tests.
Okay.
6.
Hey Louisa, how did you get on this summer?
Hi. I went to a sports camp for most of August. I'm exhausted now.
How did it go?
Well, I learnt lots of new sports, even some I didn't really want to, but they weren't so bad in the end. And it was lovely with a lake and a forest and everything, which was nice as you could get away from people if you wanted to. I just think we could have had more excursions though, as we had to stay in the camp the whole time.
So, will you go again next year?
Maybe.
7.
OK, so welcome to our programme today on Extreme Nature, where we look at places that are rarely visited by most of us, partly because they are remote and have climates which are very hot or very cold. On top of that, to visit these places, you have to be prepared to organise your own accommodation and your own local travel. The polar regions and the middle of the desert are not kind to humans, but they offer amazing sights that we cannot see anywhere else. And if you do want to see these places, you need to go before they are destroyed forever by our changing climate.
8.
Hi, Chris. Did you go to the careers office today?
Oh, hi Lucy. Yeah, I asked about accountancy.
Me too. It was interesting, wasn't it? There's going to be a lot to learn at college because it's not something we cover in school, but I'm sure we can do it.
Yeah, and the training takes years, so you'd never get sent out on a job if they didn't think you could do it.
Oh, for sure. But the next step is actually getting on the course. We'll have to do well in our exams.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll be okay.
Exam Success Units 3 and 4. Exercise 6.
Hi. OK, so my project was to find out about a man called Phineas Gage, who lived in the US in the 1800s. It's a fascinating story. Essentially, in 1848, Gage was a 25-year-old railway employee, and his employers considered him to be a very capable and hard-working man. One day, he was working on laying the track on the railway lines being built through Vermont in the northeastern states. Suddenly, there was an explosion which threw a lot of the material around. A long iron rod shot into the sky and went through Gage's cheek and then through his skull. Incredibly, he survived this, and despite this dramatic injury, he appeared okay. He was conscious and didn't seem to be in pain. What everyone was amazed by was that he was able to talk and walk to the cart that took him to the hospital. He was treated for the injury, but remember, this was in the days before modern medicine, so it's extraordinary that he recovered at all. Physically, he appeared to be well, but as he was recovering, those who knew him noticed that his personality started to change. After the accident, Gage became very rude and recounted improbably ridiculous stories all the time and did not function very well socially. The accident had affected the front part of his brain, so he could no longer make sensible decisions, and he appeared to have lost some intellectual ability because he had problems estimating the size of things and doing basic maths. What happened was that he was so different and so difficult to work with that the railway company refused to employ him again. He eventually found other work and then moved to San Francisco, where he died when he was only 36. But he lived on, as he became such a famous patient because of what his doctor, John Harlow, recorded about his personality change. It was amazing that he survived at all, but his case became very famous because it was when scientists began to understand personality and human behaviour. Before this time, people had not connected the brain and behaviour at all. Having said that, over time, people have questioned quite how dramatic this change was. A lot of the reports about his behaviour were hearsay and not based on proper evidence. Plus, the doctors then did not have modern personality studies. Also, there was no real evidence of what his personality was like beforehand, so, in the end, it was a very incomplete study. Nevertheless, it had a profound effect on the emerging field of brain studies. While it certainly appears that some aspects of his behaviour changed, scientists now have reservations about whether it was as extreme as previously thought. Today, his skull and the iron which struck him can be seen at Harvard University School of Medicine. The case illustrates how easily a small stock of facts becomes transformed into popular and scientific myth. However, despite the exaggerated stories and fabrications, what happened to Gage and the part of his brain that was injured taught us that complex functions such as decision-making and social cognition are largely dependent upon the frontal lobes. Right. So,
Exam Success, Units 5 and 6. Exercise 6. Speaker 1.
I play volleyball, but I hadn't done any training for ages. Not formal training, I mean. And I noticed that I was struggling more and more. My fitness levels just weren't good enough. So I did this rather fierce training with a guy who used to train people in the army. It was really tough, but at the end of it, I was much faster in my reactions and my speed. I don't think I'd do it again, though. It was too much. I think we all felt the same way. You don't need to go to those extremes when you're just playing for fun.
Speaker 2.
My big love is ice hockey, and we have to do training every night because it's a very tiring game. You have to be strong and fit. But one of my teammates mentioned to me that he thought his game had got better since he'd done a course in ice dancing. I know it sounds a bit strange, but I decided to try it, and he was right. It made me more flexible, and I could see opportunities to jump round things. I couldn't believe the difference it made. I'm much more confident on the ice now.
Speaker 3.
I've been doing competitive swimming for years, since I was a small child. The training is exhausting. I have to get up so early and do hours and hours before I even go to school. I got really fed up with it and wanted to quit. Swimming is such a lonely sport. I wanted to do something in a team. But my parents were really pushing me to continue. I agreed if they let me join a local football team as well. They were worried I wouldn't have enough time, but I went to the training and it was such fun, and I feel more enthusiastic about swimming now.
Speaker 4.
I used to be so lazy. I really didn't do any sport at all, and my parents thought I was spending too much time on the computer. So I said I'd try a sport if it was indoors and didn't involve too much running around. There's a good taekwondo club near me, so I went along to one of their introductory days and really liked it. You use every part of your body, but I really enjoyed it because it's a brain activity as well, so you really need to think. There were some interesting people there too, so I decided to take it up and work my way through the belts.
Speaker 5.
We live near the beach, so I spend a lot of time surfing. I'd learnt as a child from my dad. I was okay, but I wasn't very confident with the big waves, and there were some things that I couldn't do properly. So I asked one of the local surfers to help me. In fact, several of us felt the same, so in the end, he ran a short course for us. We went right back to the basics, but I think that was a good thing. It really helped my technique, and I've been tackling bigger and bigger waves. I might try a competition next.
Exam success, Units 9 and 10. Exercise 4.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. Today I'm talking to Harry, a high school student, about his work for Teen News. So, first of all, Harry, tell us, what is Teen News? Why do teens need their own news programme?
Well, a bit like the title says, it's a news programme for teenagers from about 13 years old to 18. And the thing is that we try and slant our reporting so that, as well as delivering the facts, we're showing the relevance or impact of various news stories on teenagers.
It's very popular. Do you know why?
We cover all the major news stories that you would see on an adult programme, but we alter how much time we devote to each one depending on how much interest that story has for teens. And we found it's become popular by word of mouth, because then the kids who are watching go into school and discuss it the next day, so they all want to be part of it.
And I guess part of the appeal is you have teen presenters, don't you?
Yes, it's teens writing and delivering it as well as watching. And it means not only that our audience can relate better, but, more importantly, it shows them that they have the opportunity to do something like presenting or creating content.
And all your reporters are very good, aren't they?
Yes, they're very, very committed to it. And I think they are automatically natural in front of the camera because we've all grown up using social media and so on. They talk very directly to the audience. We don't usually report from a studio. Plus, some of them are just very talented reporters.
So, let's look at more detail. What range of topics do you cover?
We cover everything from major world headlines to entertainment. For example, we might do a light piece on a new ride opening at a theme park, as well as the more serious news. We cover openings of films and interview the winners of teen science competitions. Also, a lot of companies contact us to promote courses, like the car manufacturers who wanted us to report on a new driving course they'd set up for teens. The idea was to make teenagers more responsible drivers, and they had a very good response.
And the programme is so good, it's won several awards, hasn't it?
Yes, we were really pleased about that. I mean, it's tricky for us because we can't do the big investigative reports that traditional news outlets do, but maybe teens aren't so interested in those. We won an award for making our stories very fair and making sure we presented all the different points of view.
And finally, how do you answer the argument that you have too many sponsors?
Yeah, I know people are concerned that the companies were pushing products to teenagers, but like a lot of news programs, we need the sponsorship to keep going. And they don't interfere with us at all. In fact, it's better to have more because then you don't have one advertiser dominating what you're doing, so we're quite comfortable with it.
Harry, thanks very much.